All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. I am Carly Endries, Senior Project Coordinator for the North Dakota Brain Injury Network. You are at our Webinar Wednesday. We do these every other Wednesday from 1:30 to 3 or about there. And there are CEUs available. So if you're watching this recorded, the link is right under you. You just fill that out and we'll get you your CEUs back. If you're watching live, the CEU request will go up in the same spot where you found the login information to get in today. We have, Craig Phillips with us today, and I'm super excited to have him back. He has presented for us before and is always popular, and people love to hear from him. Love his positive attitude. So welcome, Craig. I'm going to turn it over to you. You can take it away.
Thank you so much, Carly, for having me back. I'm really, it's an honor to be here and look forward to being available to people there in the North Dakota area. So if anybody listening to this or here present today, Paul or Alexandra, if you know anybody that might be interested in hearing my experience, strength, and hope on the topics, I have 16 different presentations as I was sharing with Carly. Recently, I was added to the Brain Injury of America's Speaker Bureau. So I'm available. I have that, I guess, that credential now per se to have that that endorsement from them. So I'm really grateful for the doors that may open up. It's all about service. You know, it's not about me. It's not about me trying to promote me, because that does nothing. You know, comparison does nothing, because what it does, it either puts people above or below. But as we identify with one another, that gives us hope, because we realize that we're in need of one another on the journey, you know, on the process. And to start out, I want to just share a quote. I've been thinking about how to introduce the presentation today, and I think it's really important to realize and understand that this quote means a lot during to this presentation. It's a quote by Albert Einstein. At least I attribute this quote to him. There are people out there in the quote world that say it's not him. I don't know who exactly came up with this, but the quote is, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. And again, everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. So it's really important to realize that we all have genius, that we may not be able to climb a tree, you know, whatever that tree might be. That, you know, in my case, I tried to, work in traditional employment for many years, and it just didn't work. And, you know, I wound up believing and feeling like I was stupid in a way, because I didn't fit into the mold. So, the good news is that we do not have to fit into a mold to be successful. So, and also to contribute and to be valuable. So what I'm doing is I'm looking to hide the floating controls. So just per your information, if you're watching this after the fact of this presentation, this is my website. As you can see, there are a lot of different things on the website that you can come to. I have resources. I have a lot of different resources here that you might benefit from, and the people that you help work with. So there's a lot of different resources. Just want to get your attention to that. So this is the article that I sent to Carly. Okay, and in the article, it's acceptance of creating our new normal after brain injury and stroke webinar and the University of North Dakota. And as you see here in this article, there are the link to the presentation, which I'm going to click on, or which I already have open, and then the resources that I just showed you. And then there's a brief autobiography of what I'm about, that I'll share about during the presentation. And then places that I've spoken around the country, Cleveland Clinic, different places. And then I have my 16 core presentations that I'm available to give as there's an opportunity. So share this availability with your folks out there. So what I'm going to do now is click on the presentation. I'm going to shut certain things so that we don't have these things in the way, and we'll get started. So this is the presentation. I'm going to click here and give it a full screen and start up here. Can you all see it? Yes. Okay,
Yes.
so I'll just make it a little larger. Okay. So what I've done, part of the resources that I've created are 40 posters. And this is one of the posters that I created. Okay. It says in nature, light reflects, creates the color. Excuse me. In nature, light creates the color. In the picture, color creates the light. Hans Hofmann. Life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself, by George Bernard Shaw. And if you could change the way you tell your story, you could change the color and create a life in Technicolor, by Isabel Allender. So the good thing about it is that we can change the way that we tell our story, even though we may have been affected by a brain injury or by a stroke or by some other difficulty in our life, adversity. Those things do not have to define us. Instead, we can create our own picture. And that's what we're going to talk about today in this presentation. And this is a quote that I like. It says, create your own visual style. Let it be unique for yourself, yet identifiable for others. So here I'm going to share a little bit about my background for people. I don't know if other people have heard my presentation on finding purpose after brain injury and stroke, but I shared about my journey through the process. So what I'm going to do is, I believe that we all learn in different ways. Some people learn auditorily, some people learn visually, and some people learn kinesthetically or by doing. So what I do is I provide through my website, I have articles, video presentations, ebooks, posters, video presentation. I have different ways to present the information to make it available for people that learn in those ways. And the reason why I created this and have this now up in PDF form is because we learn as we watch, some of us, or we learn as we listen, or a combination. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read this for people that are out there in the community that maybe do not have visual ability to read. So they're going to listen to it and then they'll hear what I'm sharing. In the event that you have questions or comments, you can leave those in the chat. And at the end of my presentation, Carly will let me know about those, and we'll open up the mics, and at that time you can share. Again, share this information with people in your community, people that are influencers that can help other people living with brain injuries, strokes, or other kinds of trauma, abuse, or adversity, because the principles can apply to those individuals. Okay, so my car accident happened in 1967 when I was 10 years old. I'm 65 years old, so it's been 55 years. I fractured skull with right frontal lobe damage, severe brain bruise, brainstem involvement, a coma for 3 weeks, fractured left femur, traction 6 to 7 weeks. I was in a spica cast for 5 to 6 months, which is a full body cast until my femur healed. I taught myself how to walk, talk, read, write, and speak complete sentences after the accident. I underwent 2 EEGs and a battery of psychosocial and cognitive testing. The results were shared with my parents. They did not disclose those to me, and I only found out about them after the day of my graduation from graduate school, as I said. So, and the results showed that I was not expected to succeed beyond high school academically. Took me 10 years to get my undergraduate degree with 4 different majors, 2 universities, 1 college. Took me 3.5 years to obtain my master's degree with 2 programs, graduate programs in 2 different graduate schools. I have a master's degree in rehabilitation counseling. I obtained my credentials as a certified rehab counselor at the time of before I graduated from the University of Kentucky. So my vocational rehabilitation, social security disability experience. Had a long history of getting and being fired from non-professional and professional jobs, difficulties in undergraduate and graduate schools, client of the vocational Department of Vocational Rehabilitation 2 times. Once in Florida, while I was still a counselor, working as a vocational rehab counselor, they made me a client because I disclosed to my supervisor that I had sustained a brain injury when I was 10 years old. I was having difficulties working on the job as a voc rehab counselor. And she told this, the manager, and the manager told the district supervisor, and they made me a client. And after my probation as a counselor, they terminated me, and then I continued on for a year, and then they terminated me as a client because of a job placement that didn't work out. So and then I moved to North Carolina to take a job in workers' comp for a insurance company. 4 months later, I was fired, terminated. They told me they no longer needed my services. At that time, I reapplied the 3rd time for SSDI, and I also applied for services with the North Carolina Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. I went through that process. After I went through the evaluation process, my counselor told me and disclosed that I was unemployable. So I felt like someone all dressed up with nowhere to go, despite my academic and vocational determination over the years. So, I kept on running into a plethora of walls and having difficulties. And while I was going through that second vocational evaluation process, my desire was to be a motivational speaker, and the evaluator said you could not be a motivational speaker. So, the interesting thing about that, maybe that was at the time that I couldn't be, but thank God I didn't give up on my dream to do that. And I didn't give up on my desire to be able to give in ways that would work for me. So sharing my experience of how I created my new normal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through what helped me. And this may be something that you want to encourage the people that you work with to look at in their lives so that they can move beyond the box of a diagnosis and a prognosis that maybe some medical community or provider or someone may be giving to them, that they are not their diagnosis, they are not their prognosis. They're not a label, a stereotype, or stigmatization. It's very important for me to realize that, remember that. I am unique, I am a gift, and I have a genius. Like we talked about, everyone is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. So it's just really important to encourage people to realize that they have a genius. They just need to stick with the process to find out what works. So in my experience, I had to reach a point in my life where I was, I had tried everything I could possible to not be a person with a brain injury, affected by a brain injury. When I reached that point, I had a bottom and I began to grieve. I began to look at I confront my denial. And I went through a grieving process. And when I was in graduate school, before graduate school at the University of Kentucky, I worked in the cemetery business. And while I was going through that, I also had an interest in the funeral business before then. And I went ahead and I taught a class. I did a presentation on the grieving process. And there's a wonderful book called On Death and Dying by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She talks about the 5 stages of death and dying, and that can be applied to any grieving process. I needed to confront my denial. I needed to have a period of being angry about what I couldn't change. Then I tried to bargain my way out of what I couldn't change. And then when I realized I couldn't bargain my way out, I became depressed. So I went through a period of depression because I couldn't change what I couldn't change. But what that did is it got me to a place of acceptance. And when I got to a place of acceptance, what it helped me to realize is that I had choices. And those choices, what they did is they gave me hope, because I began to realize that I could create a little at a time. And as I've talked about in my presentation, neuroplasticity, setting goals and creating hope after brain injury and stroke, for me, it just took me a long time. I had to learn one skill and another skill and do those one skill at a time a bazillion times, and then learn another skill and do that a bazillion times, combine those into a skill set. And then do that, repeat that over and over and over again. So it just takes me a long time. It may take me longer. I like a quote by Albert Einstein. He says, it's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer. So what's really important for me to do, and for maybe people to encourage other people, that don't give up. You know, it's not gonna, it may not happen overnight. It certainly didn't happen for me, but it's because I stuck with the process. As I was sharing with Carly earlier, a quote by Zig Ziglar, who said, sometimes adversity is what you need in order to become successful. You know, so it's really important to realize that. So what I'm going to do is that, so these are spiritual awakenings that I had. I call them spiritual awakenings because it wasn't something that I naturally had. It was something that I became aware of. I believe that God opened my eyes to these things. And it's very important in my experience to invite God into my life on a daily basis, a loving God to guide, direct, and lead me in my process. And that's what's helped me to be able to do what I've been able to do over time. And it's been a one day at a time process for me. I get up in the morning, I ask God to guide and lead and direct me. And then I sit on my computer and I get ideas and I just continue to formulate ideas and so forth. And over time, I've written 2,037 articles. I've created 446 video presentations. I've written 12 ebooks, created 40 posters. I've done a tremendous amount on neuroplasticity. Over the past 27 months, I've spoken 90 times around the country on different topics of my presentations that I've given. And recently, as I shared with Carly, that the Brain Injury Association of America added me to their speakers bureau. So if in the event that you know people looking for a speaker, I'm available to do that. And currently I don't charge anything, which is a gift. So let your people know that they're getting real bargain, top quality professional information from somebody. I'm not being facetious. I think that the caliber of information of what I provide, I think is it changes things. You know, well, I don't get into that quote right now, but it's a quote by Steve Jobs. So I may talk about it later, but so these are the spiritual awakenings I had. I realized that I've been I have been giving my power away to try to fit into a square peg, fit my square peg into a round hole as an individual living with a brain injury and invisible disability. I've realized that I've been fighting against myself by not accepting that I had defects and limitations that I could not have in my life. I realized that I've been giving other people the calculator to determine my worth and value as an individual living with a brain injury and the impact of a invisible disability too. I began to embrace my power through the power of choice. So what the power of choice allowed me to do through the 3A, the awareness, acceptance, and action, after I grieved it, I was able to begin to realize I had the power of choice. I began to realize that I could look at my life as an individual living with a brain injury and an invisible disability in a different way. In the process, with the help and guidance of a loving God, I realized that I could reframe my experience living with a brain injury and an invisible disability, reframe as a rebirth, a clean slate. So I could begin to look at my experience, not just as something that I had to do over, but that I could create something new. Like I talked about in that poster above, I could create in Technicolor by telling my story in a different way. I no longer needed to define myself by my brain injury. And sometimes what happens is that because society puts us in a box, and also because of the medical model of treatment also puts us in a box through a diagnosis and a prognosis. I'm not a diagnosis, I'm not a prognosis, I'm not a label, stereotype, or stigmatization. So by embracing my rebirth, I began to look at life through different eyes of why not me instead of eyes of why me. By embracing my rebirth, I began looking at my life through the eyes of what is instead of what isn't because of my brain injury, a different lens. By looking at my life through the lens of why not me and what is, I gained hope. I began to realize that I no longer had to be limited by my deficits and limitations because of my brain injury and invisible disability, by what no longer works for me, limited by no longer what works for me. Instead, I can learn how to use my passion, what makes me feel deeply and vitally alive, in ways that will and would work for me to develop my genius, work for me to create hope in my life for a little, hope in my life a little at a time, with the help and guidance of a loving God, one day at a time. Hope reminds me that I can. And here's a couple quotes that I really like. Regardless of your lot in life, you can build something beautiful on it. And then the quote that I talked about several times, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. So in the process of learning to use my gifts, talents, and abilities in ways that will work for me, I can build something beautiful on my life. I can learn how to develop my own genius. What makes me uniquely me? And here's a couple more quotes that I really like. When one door of happiness closes, another door opens, but often we look so long at the closed door that we do not see the one that has been opened for us, by Helen Keller. And here's a quote that I've hung on to ever since I created Second Chance to Live 15 and a half years ago. If you advance confidently in the direction of your dreams and endeavor to live the life that you've imagined, you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours, by Henry David Thoreau. So what helps me to create my new normal? As I talked about the importance of grieving what I could not change. I'm not my brain injury. I'm not my deficits or limitations. I'm not a label, a stereotype, or stigmatization. I'm not meant to stay in someone's intended box for me. And in society, people want to put us in a box, and they laugh at us, and they maybe minimize, marginalize, dismiss, and discount us. And that's a very sad thing, but it is what it is. And so it's good just to be aware of that. And I talk about, there's a fable that I'll talk about in a little while, but I'll mention it now. It's the fable of the tortoise and the hare. The fable of the tortoise and the hare is a wonderful illustration, because what happened is that the tortoise challenged the hare to a race, and the hare scoffed at the tortoise, saying, you can never beat me. You cannot win your race. But the forest animals, they set up a course, and they started off on the race, and the tortoise kept moving forward, but the hare went off. It played in the field, it lay down, it took a nap, it got up, it realized it had, needed to get to the finish line, and it raced to the finish line, and the hare was at the finish line waiting for the tortoise, or the tortoise was waiting for the hare at the end of the race. And at the bottom of the fable, it says, slow and steady wins the race. Now, there may be people in your life that are like the hares, that scoff at you, that tell you can't win the race, that they will beat, that you're not enough. But the reality is as a tortoise, and as the fable pointed out, slow and steady wins the race. And as I talked about earlier with regards to the quote by Albert Einstein, it's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer. So what's really important to realize too is that these are concepts and principles that help me to create my new normal. So, the learning styles, it's really important to get tested. If you do not know how the way you learned before, if you are a visual or auditory or kinesthetic learner before your brain injury, that may have changed after your brain injury. So it's really important to get together with Carly or some other professional to find out how you learn best. Because if you're having people teach you in ways that don't work for you, you're having a hard time learning from them. It may not be because you're not being compliant. It just means that you maybe don't learn in the way they're trying to teach you. I had a friend who tried to teach me things for a long time, computer-wise, and I just wasn't getting it. He got frustrated and angry with me, and I got frustrated and so forth, until I realized that, I was trying to get from a person who was doing his best to teach me, but because I didn't learn in the way that he was teaching me, I just wasn't getting it. So I needed to learn how learn best. And the way I learn best is through patterns and repetition and learning stuff. I've watched a bazillion different YouTube videos and followed patterns. And that's how I've learned how to do a lot of the stuff on my website, being self-taught. So, it just takes persistence and not giving up, tenacity, and be committed to the process. And, I like the illustration of the railroad, a brain injury life is like a railroad. We're traveling down this railroad called life. And then we have this brain injury. And a brain injury is likened to a switch on the railroad of life that points us off in the direction that we normally would not be able to, well, may not really even want to travel. But because of the switch, the brain injury, which is out of our control, we're pointed off into a direction that makes no sense, and it's hard to understand. But the good thing that I've learned through my process is that as I go along, I get to learn how to use my gifts, talents, and abilities in ways that work for me. And I do not have to climb trees. I do not have to work in traditional employment to be successful. And my life has proven that to be the case because I didn't give up. So I really encourage people out there that may be living with brain injuries, strokes, or other trauma, adversity, or disappointments in your life. Just don't give up because more is going to be revealed. I've been training in different martial arts for the past 26, 27 years. My sensei, when I first started training at the martial arts school, he said, we had a discussion and he gave me the illustration. He said, Craig, what I do is I give you ingredients. Well, your job is to combine those ingredients to bake a cake. So, and in the process to become a black belt or a better martial artist. So over time, I combine those ingredients that I've learned from him and other martial artists along the way and different disciplines to create my own style. And a quote that I'll mention later, my sensei Sigong's original instructor was Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee's philosophy of Jeet Kune Do was research your own experience, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add specifically your own creation. So that's what I've done in my life as a martial artist, through the different martial art disciplines that I combined: the Kali, the Filipino stick fighting, the Western boxing, Muay Thai, grappling, and different salat, different things that I've combined to become the martial artist that I am today. And I continue to refine and make those better, to become better and to create my own, to improve my own style, my own creation. So, and I like the illustration of the tapestry. The tapestry has many threads on one side that seem to make no sense, and on the other side, there's a beautiful picture a story being told. And the multicolored threads can be likened to disappointments, discouragements, circumstances, opportunities, just a lot of different things that jumbled together. They seem to make no sense, but as I can just trust God with the process, that a beautiful picture is being created on the other side of the tapestry. So, I believe our circumstances are not meant to keep us down, but they're meant to build us up because they teach us lessons that normally we would not be able to learn. And that as we're willing to learn, those lessons give us experiences, and those experiences give us the opportunity to learn things in ways that can improve our quality of life and also enhance the lives of individuals that God brings into our lives through being of service. I like a quote by Muhammad Ali. He says that service is the rent that we pay for our time here. So, it's all about service. What I do is about service. It's not about promoting Craig. It's not about promoting Second Chance to Live. It's about encouraging hope. It's encouraging people not to give up on themselves and loving God or themselves, because more will be revealed with time. The pieces of the puzzle will come together in the correct order and at the right time by not giving up. So, just really encourage you out there, just don't give up. And then, I like a riddle by a riddle. It says, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer to the riddle is one bite at a time. So, and another, there's several individuals that Thomas Edison was the inventor of many different things. And one of those things was the light bulb. And Thomas Edison had a lot of different failures per se. And he had a newspaper reporter come up to him and he said, Thomas, you failed so many times. And Thomas said, no, I'm not failed. I just found 10,000 ways that won't work. So it's the matter of thing is that we don't give up. We just keep finding out what doesn't work. Oh, well, it's not about perfection. It's not about failure. It's about finding what doesn't work. And that's what's really important, to find what does not work so that we can find what works. And that's, and it is a journey. It's a process. It's not a destination. It's going to go on for the rest of my life. I'm going to continue to learn things. And then also I like Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth was the strikeout king, but he was also the home run king. And he had a newspaper reporter come up to him and say, babe, you strike out so many times. He said, yeah, he told the newspaper reporter, every strike brings me closer to their next home run. So instead of looking at it as being a failure of striking out, he was looking at it, every strike brings me closer to their next home run. So it's really important to realize that it is about, keep stepping up to the plate. And it's not about looking at how many times we fail, but looking at what we've done in order to find what does work for us. Excuse me. And again, really important to realize is that purpose is about a process and a journey, not a destination. It takes what it takes. There's no silver bullets or magic potions. I get to learn by not giving up, by trusting a loving God and myself, by not giving up. And then, as I shared earlier about Bruce Lee's philosophy, finding what works, getting rid of what doesn't work, and creating what works for you. And then, like I said, our circumstances are not meant to keep us down, but they're meant to build us up because they teach us things that can be used in order to enhance our lives. And then here's another parable, the parable of the cracked pot. The parable of the cracked pot there's this water bear. The water bear has a pole. He has two pots. He goes down to the river each day. He loads the pots with water to bring them up to his master's house. And on the way up for 2 years, the one pot, it's perfect. It doesn't leak any water. The other pot has cracks in it. Each time it goes up and down, it starts to feel more embarrassed. After 2 years, it says to the water bear, I'm so embarrassed. I only give you half of my load. And the water bear said to him, did you not notice the beautiful flowers that are on your side of the path? I knew about your flaws, so I planted seeds. So every time I've gone up to the master's house, it's watered the seeds. And as a result, I'm able to grace my master's house with beautiful flowers. And that's the way it is for our lives, in our lives. As we do not give up, that we realize that God can use whatever our flaws might be. We may feel like other people don't really accept or really applaud that or celebrate that. But as we trust God, God's going to be able to use those things and create beautiful things with our lives. So embracing the power to get out of the box. The above realizations help me to embrace my power as an individual living with a brain injury and an invisible disability. The above realizations help me to create my new normal beyond a box, beyond a diagnosis or a prognosis. Again, I'm not a diagnosis or a prognosis. What other people want or need me to believe about what I can and cannot accomplish in my life. That's really important to realize that we get to define, what we're a genius at. And even though people may be laughing, scoffing, telling us that we can't win, and that we may not be able to climb a tree like other people want us to be able to climb, we just keep going. We don't give up. We keep looking for solutions. We keep stepping up to the plate. We keep realizing that I've not failed. I've just found maybe 10,000 ways that don't work. I like a quote by Bruce Lee. He said, I don't fear a man that's done 10,000 kicks. I fear a man who's done one kick 10,000 times. So it's really important because maybe you have to just learn how to do one thing and do that 10,000 times. And that's what I've had to do in my life in order to become proficient as a martial artist. I've had to do things a gazillion times, and that may be what's necessary for you to do in order to be successful. And it's the same thing with my presentations. I had made so many different iterations of this particular presentation over the last, 10, well, since I created this. So it's a matter of learning how to keep tweaking what makes it more effective, what makes it better. Because I have limitations. I have short-term memory issues. I have different things that maybe get in the way. I am very, I'm an expansive thinker. It's very hard for me to condense things. So it just takes me time to keep putting things and condensing them and centrifuging them down and making them more that can be presented in the more effective way. So, I share that with you all to realize that, my journey may be like your journey. You may be frustrated because you're not able to get things as quick as other people get, but don't give up because you'll get it. Just stick with the process. Okay. So I'm not a label, a stereotype, or a societal stigmatization. What other people may want me to believe about myself because of my brain injury and my invisible disability. So to be able to create my new normal, I need to stay focused on why not me instead of why me. I needed to stay focused on what is instead of what isn't. Okay. By focusing on why not me and what is, I am able to own my power, the power in my mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions to empower my ongoing brain injury recovery process one day at a time. There's a quote that I like, and I forget the author. It says that many people give away their power by believing they don't have any. So it's really important to realize that we have more power than we realize with God's help, one day at a time, and asking God to help us. And we get ideas, and those ideas help us to succeed beyond all reasonable expectations. That's what my neuropsych in Florida said, that because of sheer persistence and motivation, I've been able to succeed beyond all reasonable expectations. And I think that quality in me has helped me to continue, even though I was not able to climb the tree or be successful in vocational settings, or even through vocational rehabilitation. I was not successful, but because I didn't give up, I kept looking, I kept learning. I had the ability to find what would work for me and develop my craft. And brain injury recovery can be likened to running a marathon, not a sprint. Okay, so that's really important to realize, that it doesn't happen overnight. That doesn't make you or me wrong or bad because we're not getting it quicker. It just means that we need to stay with the process. So to create and achieve my new normal one day at a time, I needed to include every part of what makes me me. My mind, body, soul, spirit, and emotions in my ongoing brain injury recovery process. I needed to examine how my mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions have been impacted by the injury to my brain and invisible disability. So key to developing my new normal. With my growing insight and awareness, I am able to develop my mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions in my new normal. Develop my new normal in ways that work for me to excel in my purpose. To understand and develop my mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions to improve my well-being, quality of life, and ability to be of service. So as an individual living with the impact of a brain injury, I needed to understand how my mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions contribute. So here's a brief explanation of how I see, the four different things that make up who I am. My mind is growing in wisdom and understanding of how I relate to others, other people, and the world around me. My body is using the principles of neuroplasticity to improve my hand-eye coordination, balance, body awareness, coordination, focus, and agility, to create new neural pathways and brain reorganization through repetitive mirror movements, using both the dominant and non-dominant sides of my body. Through engaging both sides of my body, I engage both my right and my left side of my brain, my right and left hemispheres. Through my corpus callosum and in my presentation, neuroplasticity, setting goals, and creating hope, after brain injury and stroke. I go into in-depth explaining the concept and the principles of neuroplasticity and share demonstrations of how I've used that in my own life. So Carly, I'm willing to come back and do that if in the event that you'd like me to do that, as well as my other presentations, okay? My spirit, my connection to God, my connection to myself, making peace with God so that I can learn how to trust him and his guidance, making peace with my past so that my past does not spoil my present. And that's been really important. I needed to look at issues in my life that maybe were sabotaging me through my family of origin, maybe my codependency, maybe adult child issues, maybe other things that I was shaming myself about and undermining who I was as an individual. So, and as we go along, I'll share some things that have helped me to sort through that. So, my soul growing in knowledge and wisdom of how to accomplish what I discovered through my process of acceptance, learning to use my gifts, talents, as I tap into my ability to live my purpose through my being. Okay, my emotions, learning how to talk, trust, and feel with safe people. The power of identification, coming out of the shadows of isolation and breaking free from the feelings of alienation. What I discovered about my relationship with hope. This is really important for me to realize, and it may be important for you to realize too in your process. For many years, I had a dysfunctional relationship with hope because hope did not play by my rules and fulfill my expectations. So getting a healthy relationship with hope. Through my process, I gained a healthy relationship with hope. I began to see hope as a coach that empowered my ability to be a co-creator in my life and relationships. Being a co-creator through being an actor instead of a reactor in my life. An actor through being responsible to and for my reactions to my life and circumstance. Okay, and what that does is allows me to be empowered rather than to continue to believe that I'm a victim. And what a victim mentality does, it keeps me stuck like a deer in the headlights. I don't get to move forward. I blame somebody else for my position. But as I am taking responsibility for myself, I find hope in my life and I find freedom, a freedom that I never knew existed. And here's a quote that I mentioned earlier. Sometimes adversity is what you need to face in order to become successful. So rather than looking at circumstances and things in our lives, and reacting to those, we can begin to examine and look at things in our lives. And what's really helped me is I do a lot of journaling. Journaling helps me to connect my head to my heart to my head. Because my head sometimes doesn't want to tell my heart what's going on, and my heart doesn't want to admit to my head what's going on. So as I journal, I'm able to connect things. It's something that I learned that is really maybe helpful to you. When I'm angry about things, it's not about anger, it's more about fear. So I need to examine what I'm really fearing rather than just why I'm angry. If I look at what's underneath and why I'm fearful, I may find freedom from the anger that maybe traps me. There's a quote that I like that if I'm trying to remember verbatim what it says. Yeah, I can't remember. Essentially what it says is that if you have revenge in your heart, dig 2 graves, one for yourself and the other person. So it's really important to get rid of that stuff. If you're holding resentments to other people, I like another quote. It says that having a resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. So it's really important, if I'm holding on to resentments, because of whatever, I need to examine those resentments so that I can get free so I'm not poisoning myself. And another quote that I like, that having a resentment is like picking up a hot coal to throw at somebody else. I'm the only one that gets burned. So, and here's another quote that I wrote. Our circumstances are meant not to keep us down, but they're meant to build us up because they build us up by teaching us lessons that provide experiences and offer opportunities. And here's a quote that I like by B.C. Forbes. History has demonstrated that the most notable winners usually encountered heartbreaking obstacles before they triumphed. They won because they refused to become discouraged by their defeats. My encouragement to you, give yourself permission to look at your life in a different way as an individual living with a brain injury and an invisible disability, in a way that is separate from a diagnosis, a prognosis, a label, stereotype, or stigmatization, in a way that will empower your process and journey. With your mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions, begin to paint on the canvas of your life in a way that will work for you, as the poster above, creating our life in Technicolor. With your mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions, begin to build on your lot in life in a way that will work for you. Like that quote by Zig Ziglar, regardless of your lot in life, you can build something beautiful on it. And then don't compare yourself or your lot. Don't compare your lot or what you're building on your lot with anyone else. Develop your own genius. Run your own race, stay in your own lane. What I discovered about my interactions with other people. Okay, to make changes through my grieving process, I discovered that I needed to feel feelings and make changes. Feelings that were uncomfortable and changes that were hard to make, but I had a choice. To not feel these feelings and make these changes meant that I would remain in denial. And by staying in denial, never worked for me. I needed to grow in awareness and acceptance to be able to get into action to create hope in my life through the grieving process that we talked about, confronting my denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. My awareness helped me to understand. That for anyone to come out of their denial would mean that they would have to make changes and feel feelings maybe they don't want to make, both of which they may not be willing to or able to feel or make. Consequently, I need to remember that I am not responsible for how other people choose to treat me. It's not all about me. It's about how other people choose to interact with me. Yes, I do need to make amends. If I've done things to hurt people, I need to make amends for those. But it's not all about me. It's I need to realize, and keep my side of the street clean. Let other people keep their side of the street clean, and build on my lot in life. Okay, I am powerless. I cannot make anyone's decision to feel feelings or make changes. With this awareness, I realize that I need to let people believe what they want to or need to believe. I need to stop trying to convince them to believe. Consequently, I need to remember that I am powerless over what people choose to believe. With this awareness, I realized that I was really the only one who needed to accept my reality. To get on with my life, to create a good life for myself, and to be of service through my gifts, talents, and abilities. Through my process and journey, I have discovered 12 different ways that have helped me to create hope in my life and my new normal in my well-being and my relationships. Okay. So benefits of creating hope in my life through my new normal. In the process of using these 12 ways, I've discovered my purpose, created my new normal, empowered my brain-body connection, and have learned how to be an advocate. These 12 ways may also help you. These ways may also help you to create hope in your life and your new normal. In the process of creating hope, you may discover your purpose, improve your brain-body connection, and help you to be an advocate. So it's inch by inch, life's a cinch. And here's a couple quotes that I like by Helen Keller. When one door of happiness closes, another door opens. We previously mentioned this, but I think it's really good to mention again. Another door opens, but so often we look at the closed door that we do not see the one which is open, which has been open for us. And I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do something that I can do. And that's by Helen Keller. So what I'm going to do now, these are the 12 ways, and I'm going to read them for people maybe that are having a hard time with visions that they can't read this, but they'll be able to listen to it. So these are 12 ways that have empowered and continue to empower my ability to create hope in my life and experience my new normal. Number one, admitted that we are powerless over the impact and the effects of our brain injury and invisibility disability, that our lives have forever changed because of our brain injury. Although we are powerless over the impact of our brain injury and our invisible disability, we are not helpless. As a result, we no longer have to feel like a victim of that which we are powerless, or that we are helpless because of our brain injury and our invisible disability. The second way came to believe that a power granted ourselves could help us to accept that we are powerless, what we are powerless to change the impact of our brain injury and our invisible disability. Consequently, we can rely on the power that many of us have found to be God. We can rely on a loving God to help us to stop sabotaging and undermining our lives, well-beings, and relationships by trying to not be impacted by a brain injury. We can rely on a loving God to help us to accept ourselves and to create a good life for ourselves. The third way, with the awareness that we need this power in our lives, we can make a decision to ask Him to lead and guide our process and journey. We no longer have to figure things out on our own. Instead, we can ask Him to help us own our power as an individual living with a brain injury and an invisible disability. Own our power through what we can do, not what we can't do. Own our power, what is in our power to control in our mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions in ways that work for us a little at a time, one day at a time. The fourth way, with the help of a loving God, we can begin to examine areas of our lives that no longer work for us. That undermine and sabotage our lives, thank you, our well-beings and our relationships. With the help of a loving God, we can look for patterns such as defense mechanisms in which we defend, answer, and explain what we can't do. Patterns that keep you and I feeling like a victim of our brain injury and invisible disability and our circumstances. The fifth way, we no longer have to remain isolated because of what we are no longer able to accomplish with our lives. By admitting to our lives a loving God in another person, what we are unable to accomplish, we can come out of the shadows of isolation and break free from feelings of alienation from ourselves, a loving God, and other people because of what we cannot accomplish. In the process, we can learn how to trust again, trust the loving God, ourselves, and other people. The sixth way, through being sick and tired of being sick and tired of getting the same results, we become willing to try something different. Try something different to get different results. Through being willing, we can ask a loving God to help us to stop doing things that no longer work. In the process, we become entirely ready to let go of what no longer works for us. The seventh way, through being ready to let go of what no longer works for us, we can be actively involved in the process of discovering how to use our gifts, talents, and abilities in ways that will work for us. We can humbly ask a loving God to help us in this process of self-discovery. In the process of letting go and discovering what works for us, we can have peace in our lives and relationships. The eighth way, through letting go of what no longer works, we can pursue what works for us. We can stop being a prisoner of our deficits and limitations. As a result, we can stop fighting with and against ourselves by trying to prove that we do not have those deficits and limitations. We can become the individual that we decide to be in our lives. The ninth way, we can let go of the life that we had planned to create the life that works for us. In the process, we can learn how to use the power of in our mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions. We can create new normal in ways that work for us through our mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions. 10, we don't have to figure out how everything will fit together as we seek to own our power in our mind, body, spirit, soul, and emotions. Instead, we can ask a loving God to guide and direct our steps each day. In the process, we can trust that the dots will connect forward. The 11th way, we can let go of the outcomes by trusting the process, loving God and ourselves. We can learn to trust through doing the footwork and letting go of the outcomes. We can let go of the outcomes one day at a time. We can trust that more will be revealed with time. And the 12th way, final way, as we grow in the understanding of ourselves with the help of a loving God, we continue to use our gifts, talents, and abilities in ways that work for us. In the process, we learn from our circumstances, our experiences, our lessons, and opportunities. In the process, we actively participate in our lives, well-beings, and the creation of our destinies. So what helped me may also help you to create your new normal. Over time and through staying committed to the process, I've been able to build on my life. I've been able to paint on the canvas of my life. Excuse me. Build on the lot, build on my lot and paint on my canvas in ways that work for me. Still have the desire to use my gifts, talents, and abilities in ways that would work for me. So I wrote poems, an autobiography, a book, not published before a friend encouraged me to start a blog on February 6, 2007. And I created Second Chance to Live. So since that time, as I previously mentioned, I've written 2,033 articles, 12 ebooks, 446 video presentations, 40 posters, and 16 PowerPoint presentations. And during the past 27 months, I've been able to speak to 90 places around the country, and I have upcoming presentations. I'm going to be speaking to the Brain Injury Association of Iowa in December and the Cleveland Clinic in March. So I'm available to speak at other places. So please let your folks know out there in North Dakota and beyond that I'm available to present. And here below, you'll see that there in this presentation that you can access through the article is I have my 16 keynote presentations. I have a way that you can go to see. This is where you can see the places where I've spoken, my presentations, and if you're interested. And then I have my the resources that I talked about earlier here that you can go to. That I have all the resources, and then I have autobiography and bullet points if you are interested in finding out more about my journey from the age of, growing up with this, before the brain injury and after the brain injury to present. You can read that. And then I have my 16 presentations down here, links to the outline, so you can click on those, and they will take you to the different presentations. So, Carly, this is the end of the presentation that I put together. We can open it up for discussion, questions, and or I can continue to elaborate on stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that was great. Great information. Very positive. Josie asked, what advice felt most helpful for you when you first started your disability identity journey? What advice would you give your younger self?
I'm not a failure. I'm not a mistake. I grew up believing that my dad was a perfectionist, and I grew up believing I didn't just make mistakes, but that I felt like I was a mistake. So back then, I wish I had the concept of the Thomas Edison. I've not failed. I've just 10,000 ways that didn't work, and every strike brings me closer to the next home run. I just needed to realize that, I wasn't a mistake, I grew up with a lot of different, with shame and blame. I grew up as a scapegoat. And back in 1967, knew? And, once my external wounds healed, who knew? I mean, I was able to walk, talk, read, write, speak, voice, sentence. I was articulate, able-bodied. I had a lot of different disappointments that I shared in my presentation of finding purpose. After brain injury and stroke, which you can go back and listen to that if you're interested. But I'm just glad that I didn't give up. I'm just glad that I kept going, and I'm glad that with God's help, and I shared in those 12 ways that I would just really encourage people to answer your question, Josie. You get look over those 12 ways. Maybe with a trusted friend, with Carly or someone else, and begin to just invite God to be a part of your process if you haven't already. And when I was in seminary, I that was one of the disappointments that I had along the way. But I had a friend. He was actually the resident RA in one of the dorm that I was staying at. And, I was explaining to him about being angry, angry at God, because of the things that I didn't understand back then. And, Tommy would share with me, he said, God's big enough to handle your anger. He's not going to alienate, he's not going to go away because of your anger. I grew up with a lot of abandonment fears. If I didn't measure up, the codependency dance that I grew up with is that if you're not okay, it's my fault. If it's my fault, my need is to make you okay. Because if I can't make you okay, there's no way that I can feel okay. And then I'll feel alienated from myself and alienated from the other person. And then I get into that people pleasing and approval seeking, mind reading, all those things that never work. So what I needed to do is to work through my journey and process and looking at those issues through working the 12 ways and 12 related ways that can help us move through that mire, the wreckage, the things that maybe get in our way, that it keep us from making peace with our past. And as a result, the past spoils our present as a result. I know, I hope that Josie, did that answer that question? And would you like me to talk about, the different struggle that I had in my life? Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, she said that was, thank you. I appreciate your advice. That was helpful.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Great.
So, Alexandra, if I can call on you, if you don't want to say anything, you don't have to say anything. I just want to, there's tremendous power in identification because it helps us to come out of the shadows of isolation and to break free from feelings of alienation. And that's why I call on folks sometimes in my presentations, just to give them permission to share and to be heard. So if you like to, okay. Thank you. Thank you. It's so glad that you're here. I wish more people were here. Hopefully more people will listen, to this stuff. I feel, and I'm not being precocious, but I feel like this stuff could benefit, the brain injury community at large, and it can help people with, the professional community, help other people in the, so. So it's really good to be here. I have the opportunity to share what I shared. Carly,
Yeah,
do you have any thoughts?
I think you covered everything so good. I really don't. I love your quote you kept reiterating about the, judging a fish by its ability to climb a tree and all that. And I think that's a really important thing to think about when we're working with individuals with brain injury or really any kind of disability. Good advice. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, Carly. I was really, really glad to have the opportunity to share. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. We will see you again soon, hopefully. Okay.
Okay. Well, God bless you all. Josie, thanks so much. And hold on one second. Let me see if there's.
Okay. Goodbye.